Let us share this link.
Of course, some guy from San Francisco put that some fighting words in the Wall Street.
We'll see
Okay.
it now.
I'll forward it to you.
You'll get the Wall Street Journal in
Yeah.
a second. No,
Show it to me, and I'll read that
Okay.
instead of being.
Without the paywall.
Well, if you go and you inspect and you remove the JavaScript, you're good.
Okay, Rabbi Simon.
Let's
Let's,
anything, you figure it out.
let's
Yeah,
talk a
wasn't
little bit.
business Just googling things as someone was telling me what they wanted.
L'chaim, and a big mazel tov to the Pansai. Right, that's the plural. Yeah, right. Plural, right? Yeah, Moshe is coming, or Moshe is coming online.
I think so.
Okay, good. Baruch Hashem. All right, guys, bedtime. L'chaim, l'chaim.
Children sleeping when they're supposed to, and waking up when you would like them to.
Amen. Amen. These are all good, healthy, and wonderful things. That's right. That's a very important Torah. Okay, Chevra. This what we are about to take a look at now, because I know that Chevra are interested in just getting a little bit of perspective on what this whole war thing is. This was written over 100 years ago by Rav Kook when he was in Golis. Golis meaning he had made Aliyah in the early 1900s. He went to a Agudas Harabanim convention in Europe just before the outbreak of the First World War, and he ended up stuck in Europe for the next 5 years, while the Great War was occurring. Right? They didn't call it the First World War because at that point they didn't know that there was going to be a second one. Right? That's otherwise that would have been pretty cynical. You know what I'm saying? That's they called it the Great War. That was the Great War. That was and Rav Kook, who for a time he was Rav in London. He was stuck in England for a number of years, and he ended up being a Rav in London. And he wrote at least this section of the Oros HaMilchama, which we're going to talk about what the name of this is in just a couple of moments. But he wrote this during the First World War. Every word here is either a quote from Tanakh or Zahar or Chazal in various places, or Sifra Kabbalah. Like this is, we could bring on each word here, just each word of this paragraph for a long time. It happens to be a fascinating, beautiful, and funny story that when Rav Kook was in England, he did not know English. He needed to learn English. So how do you learn English? So he picked up a Sansino Chumash and he read it, comparing the Hebrew to the English words. And he taught himself English from a Sansino Chumash, from a Sansino Tanakh, which is why when they said when he spoke in English, he sounded like a prophet, because that was his English. Like he spoke English like the Bible. That was his English, like hardcore, old school. Like that was from Cook's English. He spent 5 years in Europe. I think 4.5 of those years he was Rav in London. That was the one time that he left Eretz Yisrael after married early. The second time was actually he came for a year, for like 8 months to America, fundraising. And that was with pictures of Rav Kook with the mayor of New York at the time, which is like amazing. He visited the matzah factory in New York. Rav Kook visiting the matzah factory 100 years ago. It's amazing pictures. But all of that notwithstanding, all of Rav Kook's Sfarim are called Oros, or light. And they make sense when he speaks about Oros HaKodesh, the light of transcendence, and Oros Eretz Yisrael, the lights of Eretz Yisrael, and Oros HaTchiyah, the lights of resurrection. This one's strange. Oros HaMilchama, the lights of war. And that's strange because war doesn't seem to be something that is filled with light. It's filled with death and darkness and destruction. But Rav Kook's entire life was mining reality to discover the light that is within it. And so he wrote a small kuntres, a small collection of ideas in different places that were put together by his son and his Talmidim under his guidance, on how to put together this work called The Lights of War, Oros HaMilchama. This page that you're looking at here, to a large extent, is one of the most fundamental and definitional documents of the ideology of religious Zionism in general. But the meanings of this are not just for when Rav Kook wrote it, or 1948, which Rav Kook did not live to see, passed away in 1935, 1948, 1967, 1973, where people were talking about this a lot, but very relevant to the war that we are currently facing. And we're going to jump into it. We're going to take this little by little, piece by piece. There's a lot to see and a lot to understand here. Oros HaMilchama Perek Aleph says Rav Kook as follows: Kshiyesh milchama gedola ba'olam, when there is a great war in the world, misorer koyach Mashiach, it awakens the power of Mashiach, the strength of Mashiach. Now that line by itself requires a lot of explanation. Kshiyesh milchama gedola ba'olam, when there is a great war in the world, the light, the power of Mashiach is awakened. In order to understand this, we need to understand Parshas Bereshis, Parshas Nach, that's what we're holding right now between those parshas, is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu very much wanted that all of humanity should be of their Hashem, should serve Hashem. That was the goal. Throughout Parshas Bereshis, Parshas Nach, and certainly by the end of Parshas Nach, the generation of the Dor HaPalaga, the dispersion, where 70 nations are splintered off of one unified humanity. And since the generation of Enosh, third generation of human, institution of God for some other power, effectively attach themselves to sources of power and strength in the world as a way of distancing themselves from Hashem, receiving a sense of power from Hashem, but through some kind of intermediary. And this is what the Ramban writes, the Torah tells us, is called Elohim Acherim, Lo Yelecha Elohim Acherim Al Panai, other gods, meaning other sources of power. There are many sources of power in the world. This is all throughout the Ramban al Torah, but you'll see this throughout Chazal in general, that whenever you have two nations going to war against each other, it's not just the nations that are going to war, but the powers that they are drawing strength from that are going to war. We've discussed this in different contexts before, that something that we're probably all familiar with to a certain extent is America went to war against Russia during the Cold War. It was a Cold War. There wasn't a exchange of arms, at least not openly. But that war was not just between two world powers. That war was between two ideologies, two sources of power. It was a debate as to whether the most legitimate way to live your life is democracy and capitalism, or the most important and successful way to live your life, the most legitimate way to live your life and to run the world, to run your country, to run society, is totalitarianism and communism. That was the fight. Meaning there are ideologies, sources of power. And that machlokas, that war, was a war between those ideologies. Now, slowly but surely, as nations go to war against each other, what happens?
Ideologies are questioned.
They're questioned, but what happens when one ideology beats another one? One of them wins. What happens to the other one?
They assimilate.
It assimilates, or it is weakened, or it fades away, right? This is what happens to ideologies and to nations and to languages, right? There are many, many, many languages, many gods, so to speak, sources of power that as humanity progresses, those start to disappear. This the Ramchal writes, and Rav Kook, of course, draws deeply from the wells of the Ramchal. The Ramchal writes that this is the secret of the Shivim Parim, the 70 bulls that are offered on Sukkot, that dwindle as we get to the final day of Sukkot. There are 70, but it starts off with 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. The last day is 7 Hoshana Rabbah, there's 7. And then at the end of Hoshana Rabbah, there's only one. Shemini Atzeres, there's only one left. And that's the Jewish people. Meaning, when nations go to war against each other, what is effectively happening is a concentration of those powers. That which was splintered is merging, melding, melting into one. So two nations go to war against each other, and what comes out from that is not two nations, but one nation. Repeat that process a number of times over, and what you end up with is a unification of nations. Or, for example, 200 years ago, Europe had very distinct nations. England was a nation, France was a nation, Italy was a nation, Greece was a nation, Ireland was a nation. Now, the borders between Portugal and Spain are irrelevant. The only difference between France and England, to a large extent, I mean, there's cultural differences, but ideologically, it's a question of, what your favorite food is and what side of the water you live on. But fundamentally speaking, the ideologies of Europe are basically the same. Ukraine is at a crossroads, right? Ukraine is at a crossing point between a European ideology and a Soviet ideology. And there is a war being fought over Ukraine, effectively. Ukraine is the battleground between European ideology and Soviet ideology. What's going to happen in that war, we don't know. Could go either way. Either side really wants to adopt the other wholesale. I mean, Russia wants to adopt Ukraine wholesale, but not like the Ukrainian European elements. They want to conquer that. Europe is not excited to take on that fight. So, we'll see what happens. Lay there. Right? I mean, at this point in time, anything is at least theoretically possible. But effectively, what Rav Kook is telling us is, when there is a great war in the world, because nations begin to shrink, meaning not by number, but by ideologies. Says Rav Kook, quoting the pasuk in Sherashim, Es Zamir Higia. So Es Zamir Higia. So Zamir means two things. What does the word Zamir mean? To sing, right? Zmiros. But those Zmiros, the word Zamir in Shir Hashirim, and there's a very deep meaning as to why Zmiros and Zmara is the same word. It means pruning. To prune something. Anybody that has ever tried to grow anything knows the importance of pruning, right? What happens if you don't prune?
Overgrown.
It overgrows, and what ends up happening is your crop dies, right? You need to prune so that you can concentrate the nutrients and the energy of the plant to the fruit that you're trying to grow. Is Zamir Higia, a time of pruning has arrived. Zmir Aritzim, a pruning of the wicked. Meaning, when there's a war, what ends up happening is HaKadosh Baruch Hu is plucking off evil. That's the purpose of war, is to concentrate Hashem's energy in the world to that which is supposed to be. Says Rav Kook, Harashaim nichadim min ha'olam. Rashaim, wicked people, are strucken out of the world. Va'olam misbasem, and the world is infused. There is some kind of new infusion that comes into the world. People feel differently. There's new feelings that people start to have, new ideas, new thoughts. Even in the last 2 weeks, we've seen that there's a milchama gedola that is happening or brewing to happen, and something is infused into the world, something that wasn't there 2.5 weeks ago. Yeah, no, what do you say?
Well, you were saying, like, what the people are like pruned out of existence, but a lot of people who are like are dying are
We'll get there.
soldiers.
We'll get there. We'll get there in 1 second.
Civilians, and like, okay, a byproduct could be that ideologies are that to like the people who are watching.
We'll get there in 1 second.
Okay.
That question is a very important and very valid question. We're going to get there in 1 second. And then he quotes on the pasuk, "Kol hator nishma b'aratzenu," and the voice of the dove is heard in our land, meaning that call to ultimate redemption begins to sound in Eretz Yisrael. Whenever there is a war in the world, the sound of Mashiach is awakened. The feelings of Mashiach are awakened. Let's just put this on Do Not Disturb. Hold on a second. The sounds of Mashiach are awakened, and B'dafkin Eretz Yisrael, people start to hear this happening. There's a sound that happens within Eretz Yisrael. By the way, the First World War was a massive boost to the Jewish need for a homeland. Meaning, we knew that in the late 1800s, but the First World War, that feeling was brewing. That was the Balfour Declaration by the end of the First World War, right? That's Kol Hatar Nishma B'Aratzenu. And Rahman by the end of the Holocaust, that was the state of Israel was declared. Meaning, great wars happen, it awakens Mashiach, and it awakens the sound of Mashiach in Eretz Yisrael. People start to feel it in Eretz Yisrael. Now, to your point, now, this is Rav Kook's next line here. Hayechidim nisvim b'loi mishpat. Individuals are removed from this world. They die below mishpat, without justice. And that's a frightening line, because everything that Hashem does is just. So what does it mean? Yechidim nisvim below mishpat. He says, during the upheaval, the revolution of the floods of war, there is this element of the death of righteous people that provides some kind of atonement. Now, this is a very hard concept, but we speak about this from time to time, that the effect of good people dying has an immense effect on people's value for life. Now, what Rav Kook means when he says that there are individuals that die without justice, and that has an effect on those that remain to witness that horror. He's not being God's advocate. He's saying this is a reality that we don't understand. We see the effects of it. We cannot explain why. Meaning, we can explain why death of good people, certainly in horrific ways, has a profound effect on us. That we can certainly explain. Shkoyach. That we can certainly explain. We understand that on a very raw emotional level. But that doesn't justify their death at all. There's no justification for L'chaim with the Balei Simcha. You want the smoky L'chaim or the less smoky L'chaim?
More smoke, please.
There we go. Okay.
Take some more.
Yeah, you'll take a shtickle refill. There we go. Give that to Moshe.
Drink this, but it's in honor of the baby.
There we go.
Nice.
L'chaim. Chaver that are watching online, get yourself a L'chaim. That's yeah.
Oh, don't say anything racist or sexist. That's my bad.
That's not true. That's right. L'chaim. Says Rav Kook as follows: we can't understand We can't understand, we can't explain why this baby was murdered and this family was burnt. We can't explain that. But we can explain the effect. We can understand the effect that it has on us. And it's a horrific truth, but that is the truth. Says Rav Kook as follows: those that are taken, those tzaddikim that are taken during these times of war, they themselves rise up to the source of all life, and the very being of their existence may be erech klali l'tova v'livracha al klal binyan ha'olam b'chol arachav u'muvanav. Their existence, their life, and their horrific and tragic death somehow or another become building blocks to the greatness of the world that is being built. Now, that again doesn't justify it. Rav Kook is not acting as God's advocate. He's not Hashem's attorney. But he is describing the reality as we experience it. Now, does Hashem have a reason for why each one of those people became Kedoshim, became martyrs in such a way? Yes. Will we understand this? Probably not in this lifetime. But in some way, shape, and form, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has calculations for everything. I'll share with you, Moshe Weinberg mentioned this a couple of days ago, that somebody told him, this is a horrific truth, but it's worth noting. Weinberg was teaching this piece of this in Oros HaMilchama, and he mentioned this particular detail, that somebody told him that one of the people that was murdered at that concert, Rahman al-Islam, was a child molester. And when the family found out that this person had died, so the family of the kid that was molested by this individual, they put together a tefillah begging Hashem, one, to forgive that person, which is the level of tzidkus that entails is enormous, and to ask that neshama should, now that is in the Olam Ha'emes, and understands the truth of the evil of what they perpetrated against this child, should be a Melech Yosher, should be an advocate for them. Like, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu ties up every loose end? Absolutely. We have no idea why these neshamas were taken out of this world in this way. There's no logic to it as far as we're concerned. Most likely. But the effect that it has is undeniable. What Klal Yisrael has become in the last 2 weeks is undeniable. That doesn't justify it. It doesn't equate. It doesn't explain. But the result is this. So he says like this: Ve'achar kach, and thereafter, kasayim ha'milchama, at the end of the war, mischadesh ha'olam beruach chadash, the world is renewed with a new spirit. V'raglei Mashiach misgalem b'yoseh, and the feet of Mashiach are revealed more. Now, this concept of Raglei Mashiach, the feet of Mashiach, is not just a poetic phrase. Raglei Mashiach is a very deep concept in Kabbalah. Because, and the idea of Ruach Chadash is likewise a very profound notion. Because the Pasuk tells us at the beginning of Bereshis, the world was tohu, meaningless, empty, bohu, null, void. The choshech was dark, al pnei tam, on the face of the depths, and the spirit of Hashem was hovering above the water. So the Medrash Rabbah, this is the Medrash in Bereshit Rabbah, quoted inside later, the Medrash Rabbah says, Va'aretz ha'isat tohu, the land was tohu. Tohu is a reference to the Babylonian exile. Bohu, the Persian exile. Choshech, the Greek exile. Al Pnei Tehom, the Roman exile, which is what we are in now. V'ruach Elokim, mirachefes al Pnei Hamayim, and the spirit of Hashem is hovering above the water. Zeh rucha shel Mashiach. That's the ruach, that's the spirit of Mashiach. What Mashiach is lacking of feet to land. Mashiach exists in this world right now as ruach, as a concept, as an idea, as a spirit, as a thought. Mashiach has not landed. Mashiach is mirachefes al Pnei Hamayim. It's hovering. Mashiach is driving a hovercraft, right? We want Mashiach to land. That's ragle Mashiach. We want Mashiach to feet on the ground. We say ragle mevaser, the feet of the announcement of Geula. I find people sometimes that in business, in industry, in relationships, in education, that are big thinkers, no feet on the ground. You know what I'm saying? You sit down with somebody and you hear like people talking very big ideas. Amazing, amazing. No, how's it going to come into practice? How's it going to come into reality? No idea. How do we get from here to there? No idea. Feet means connected to the ground, means the ability to move, the ability to stand, the ability to carry out the task at hand. Mashiach is always present in every generation, in some way, shape, manner, form. Mashiach is there. Mirachefes al Pnei Hamayim. The landing is essential. So Rav Kook says, "V'ragle Mashiach mizgalim b'yoser." The feet of Mashiach begin to be revealed more so. Ulefi erka shel Oros HaMilchama b'kamusa, and in accordance with the greatness of and in its quality, meaning how much of the world is pulled. Kacha tigdal hatzipiya leraglei Mashiach sheba. The more intense and the more expansive the war, the more the anticipation of Mashiach that is revealed thereafter. Meaning, the more that there is tohu and bohu and choshech and tehom, the more that the ruach Elokim merachefes becomes apparent. People start realizing it, noticing it, seeing it. People are speaking more about Mashiach in the last 2 weeks than the last 2 decades. Right? Like everywhere you turn, people are like, oh, Mashiach's coming. Mashiach is coming. Last 2 weeks, everybody's talking Mashiach. Why not before? No? Hashem wants Mashiach less 2 weeks ago?
It was just an idea. Now it's like it has feet on the ground.
Well, meaning now we are anticipating them. Meaning we have been jolted out of the slumber of our day-to-day routines. Because Baruch Hu, threw some cold water on us and went. We go, this isn't the way that the world's supposed to be. This is bad. Hold up a second. What should it be? Like, what's the better? Like, how is this supposed to now become? And that's something that becomes very, very important to think about. And so the whole world now is talking. Israel's had a question for the last 40 years. What to do with the ever expanding and ever terrorizing population in Gaza? All of a sudden, the whole world is asking that question. All of a sudden, what's going to be in Gaza? What's the game plan? What's the end goal? What are they going to do? Are they going to occupy? They're not going to occupy. Who's going to be in charge of Gaza? What's going to happen? Why is the whole world asking this question? We've had this question for decades. I don't know. Because this awakens in humanity the question of, that's evil. What are we doing about it? Why are we letting this be? What are we supposed to do? What's the correct thing to do? What's the moral thing to do? What's the intelligent thing to do? What's the sustainable thing to do? Well, these are good questions. All good questions. Now, for people that are rooted in a world of halacha, rooted in a world of ideas and thought in accordance with the Torah Kedosha, so we have opinions, which are not just opinions, but they are correct.
Can't say them on YouTube though.
It's on YouTube. They are correct. La halacha, just to spell it out, it is always asur to indiscriminately kill civilians without it adding or aiding the war effort and the effort of safety and security. If there are ways of reducing civilian casualties and achieving the same goal, you must absolutely reduce civilian casualties. And if there's no way of reducing civilian casualties, then unfortunately those civilians are casualties. That's the halacha. And that's tragic. We don't want that. Hamas does. We don't. Kacha. That's the amas. I say every other nation goes to war. And that is the moral thing for a nation to do. It's the halacha. It's the correct thing for a nation to do. Is to absolutely minimize and mitigate, do everything that you possibly can not to kill civilians. But if you don't have a choice, then you kill civilians. That's how it goes. Chaval. You leave that up to the Rebbe Hashem to figure out. That's up to Hashem. Figure out what to do with that neshama and how to. That's up to him. You have to do what you have to do. Kacha. It's a chaval. We don't want that. And for the first time, the world is like asking this question now. Like, taka. What should Israel do about the fact that it has a population of, I say 2 million, it's not 2 million, it's a lot less than 2 million. Many of them have left Gaza in the last 5 years because they wanted to. Because it's not nice to live there. They don't want to live there. Those that can get out, got out. And many, unfortunately, that are not. And there are many that their whole life is to kill Jews, and that's what they do. It's chaval. It's a pity. Little boys that are, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15 years old now, in 3 years' time, they're going to pick up grenade launchers. That's where they're holding. That's a chaval. That's a terrible thing. So we have to do what we can to make sure that it's not the case. And if what that means is, Israel didn't bomb the hospital. We know this. But if that would have achieved the correct military gains, then they should absolutely bomb the hospital. That's the halacha. Happens to be that would not have achieved military gains. Certainly not the PR gains that we need in order to maintain support. Israel did not bomb a hospital. In fact, no one bombed the hospital. There was a fire outside the hospital. The hospital is still standing. It's there. It's there. Right? Say what?
Parking lot. Became a parking lot.
Right. Right. The some of the cars in the parking lot.
Those poor cars.
They work less now. I don't know if they worked well before, but no. Now there's less functional cars in Gaza. No. Beside it. It's like somebody put out a little earlier today, yesterday, whatever the case was. The Gaza is running out of fuel and food and water, but not rockets. Somehow or another, the only thing they don't run out of is rockets. That they've got plenty. No. That's the enemy that we're dealing with. Yeah.
Isn't it true we have to, something that I read where we have to actually keep an alleyway open for our enemies to actually exit?
Yes. La halacha, when you approach a city in order to do battle with them, you should give them an out.
Yeah, because we're really not even. The truth is, in a perfect milchama, you don't even have to. Theoretically, you wouldn't have to kill one person to achieve your goal.
Correct. They could just leave.
Perfect way, right?
Yeah, they could leave. So la halacha, yeah, you're 100% right. It happens to be that that's not always the case, not always possible. And I'll share with you. This is the Oros HaMilchama points this out. The Oros HaMilchama points this out. We learn this in actually next week's parsha. I'll show this to you inside here. The Oros HaKadosh says, next week, Abraham even goes to war against 4 kings in order to get his nephew back, right? In order to get Lot back out of captivity, hostage rescue, right? He goes to battle in order to get one hostage back. Goes to battle against 4 kings. So right, says the Oros HaMilchama, "Uvazeh matzanu nachas ruach latam she'Avram lo yikar l'shalom l'mlachim." Avram did not reach out to those 4 kings and say, "By the way, let's make peace first." He didn't give them an out. Why not? He says, "Ki achar sheyodu shehu ben achiv gilu shehem oivei Avraham." After they captured his nephew, he realized that they were personal enemies. Their war was not over land, the war was with him. It wasn't over resources. They wanted to go to war with him. They wanted to hurt him. And if the war is, we want to kill you, then you don't reach out to them in peace. You don't give them a way out. Because this isn't a question of we are fighting over resources and we want you to live, just give up those resources. No. This is a war of survival.
We know they're going to keep attacking.
Correct. So we don't give them a way out. We should not give an opportunity for Hamas to reach a ceasefire or reach out in peace or leave Gaza. No, because we know that they will try to come back and kill us.
Is this similar to was there a formal commandment to kill all descendants of Amalek?
Yes.
For similar reasoning?
So, because Amalek hates us.
Right.
They want to kill us. Now, whether Palestinians are Amalek, somewhat Amalek.
It doesn't say Palestinians per se, but
yes.
Scenario where
yes.
The intended goal
is to annihilate us. Yes. Then our job is a perpetual obligation of self-defense.
Isn't this very much in line with what Amalek did, what Hamas did in the last, October 7th? Isn't that exactly what Amalek did to us?
What?
Killed women and children and whatever it is.
Oh no, we don't want to kill women and children. We want to.
I'm saying Amalek did that too.
Yes. Yes.
And then Hamas did the same thing.
Yes.
Does that make them Amalek?
No.
Why not?
Because Amalek is a nationality. Now.
And that's gone now.
Most likely, yeah.
People are saying Hitler was Amalek.
Again.
But that's hard.
These are hard things to prove genealogically, la halacha. Do these nations exhibit the ideology of Amalek to a large extent? Yes. Yes, absolutely.
But is there any of the commentators today, is there anyone that holds that?
No. That la halacha that if you encounter an innocent Palestinian child that you should kill them because they're Amalek. No. Okay. Nobody says that.
But isn't the root, Bnei Israel was commanded to drive out the Plishtim and didn't do it?
Yes.
So isn't every generation, this is just a byproduct of they didn't do their job to begin with. They didn't clear up the land when they were told to.
Yes.
And we kind of suffered every generation for it.
Yes. At some point in time, and I'll say this in the clearest way that I possibly can. I think that we are making a grave mistake on a fundamental political and religious level, talking about how terrible Hamas is. The reason that we are going to war against Hamas is not because they did terrible things to us. The reason that we're going to war against Hamas is because we are right and they are wrong. They are evil and we are good. This is not retribution, although retribution is not immoral, right? Vengeance is not immoral. To be vindictive for the sake of it that's immoral. But retribution and vengeance is not immoral. That is having a sense of your value in the world. Somebody comes and hurts your family, you make sure that they never do it again. But the reason that we have not just the right, the obligation to tear this is not a question of self-defense. It's not because they might do it to us again. It is because we are right and they are wrong, and we should eradicate evil. We should get rid of evil. Because it's already happening, but certainly within the next 2 weeks, the world is going to be like, well, who's to say there's two sides? No, there is only one side. And then there is evil. And focusing on the horrors of what Hamas did is not helpful to us saying this is our cause. And I'll say this in a broader perspective, and it's important to understand. Why did Israel get such sweeping world support immediately after the 7th of October? Right.
Terrorist attack.
No. There's been terrorist attacks.
Babies, women, and elderly. It was the innocent people. They don't care about
Hostages too.
The hostages I don't care about.
It's the men, women, and
I'll tell you what it is.
Yeah.
For the first time in 75 years, we were clearly the victim. And the world loves Jewish victims. We will stand by Israel as the victim. If you are the victim of something, and we can then protect you, we're happy to do that. You tell us that you have sovereignty and strength and power and a right and an obligation and authority, well, then you're not a victim anymore. And the entirety of the Western world is built upon this. I mean, this is the foundational principle of Western liberalism, is support the victim, not the truth. And this is the core of Christian theology. Jesus died on the cross. Jesus is the ultimate victim. The more that Jews are like Jesus, the more that the Western world likes Jews. You die, you're a victim, we love you. That's when we love you. We're here for you. You tell me that you're not happy to be on a cross, that you're not going to turn the other cheek, that you're going to fight back. Well, hold up a second. We don't like those kinds of Jews. We like Jewish victims. Playing into the victim narrative is not helping us. And at some point in time, Klal needs to say, we are not victims. You perpetrated terrible crimes against us. We will punish you for those crimes. And we will ensure that you never, ever do that again to us, not because we don't want to be victims, but because you're evil. This isn't just self-defense. This is the right to sovereignty and autonomy and self-governance and a true culture of Jewish authority and determinism over our own lives. It's not we don't want to be victims anymore. Please don't hurt us. Nigmar, to be a sovereign nation in your own land means that you don't tolerate people treating you like a victim. What Hamas did to us is not, the world is like, they made you victims. Okay, so we'll support you. No, they didn't make us victims. They murdered our women and children and elderly, and took young men and women and elderly and handicapped people hostage. They're evil. This is evil. And we must fight this evil, not so that we're not victims. We're not victims. Stop thinking of ourselves as victims. Chas v'shalom. For thousands of years, we have been victims. The Christian world was always happy to make Jews victims.
I think it's an extension of, especially non-religious Jews want to be accepted by Goyim, and this is the ticket to do that. And they just
Victimhood, yes.
to perpetuate it, and that's why they care about who puts out a statement here and who puts out a statement here. Is they want to feel accepted by the non-Jewish community, and this is their opportunity to do that. And that's not something I'd say publicly, but I mean that's what it is.
You're 100% right, and I'll tell you the truth. Tachlis, at some point in time,
Nobody knows who your name is or who you are.
it's okay. We'll make the video
And then I
private.
say
Jason.
and then I say your name.
Right.
So the evil aspect, how you're saying, now, that's the reason why. So isn't it because, like, what evil is it? And part of what you're saying about how when you're constantly attacked, we don't let them go away. We don't give them a space to go out. Evil is constant. It doesn't take a break. So I think, again, just right and wrong for sure, but also we have to root this out of the world.
Yes.
Period. Like it's rotten, no good.
Yes.
So that's it, black and white.
America entered the Second World War because the Japanese dared to attack America. They dared. And the American response was, you don't do that. And since then, no one has attempted to attack the United States of America. Why? Because America said, we will not tolerate that. You take us to The Hague and accuse us of war crimes. Do whatever the heck you want. But we'll drop the atomic bomb and we'll kill everybody. Whether that's right or wrong on a moral level was not the question that the United States of America was working with. It was, you dared to attack, you will not do that again. It was an overly exaggerated response. Everybody agrees to that. The response to the attack at Pearl Harbor was not proportionate, right? Like the annihilation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki was not proportionate.
Nuts if you think about it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That is the equivalent of somebody coming and punching you in the face and then you shooting them in the face.
Was actually, so Thomas Sowell was commenting on the whole conflict, and he said exactly that. He said since it's become just communication and statements and speed of news and has become more globalized, it's diluted responses to attacks. Whereas before all this, yeah, you attack someone, they're just going to annihilate you, and then
Yes.
it's not going to happen again.
Yes.
But that doesn't happen as much anymore because of quick.
There was no reporters to like go in there and take. I mean,
See, what?
It was 2 bombs too, not just one.
Right, they did
They
Pamaim,
two.
right? And
Oh my
what
God.
and what the UK did to Dresden at the end of the Second World War? Churchill was like, there's one city left in Germany that we haven't bombed, and there's Nazis that live there. So they bombed the entire city. Like 45,000 people. Like in one, like, just annihilated the city. Annihilated it. Again, I'm not saying that it's right or wrong.
No news conferences.
No, but the war's escalated to that point, though.
Right. I'm saying,
Like,
but
Israel's had wars that escalate to that point, and they've had to annihilate places too.
never.
You're
Me-
saying that they're playing it too soft. That's your criticism.
My criticism is not what they should or shouldn't do. What I'm saying is, we assume that world opinion determines our morality. World opinion does not determine our morality. It might determine strategy, but not morality. And it might well be that we need to play to what the world thinks is moral strategically. But don't ever think that the correct thing is what the world thinks is the correct thing. The correct thing is what is in our best interest.
When you say that, well, morality is derived from God.
Yes.
So, like, are we just kind of guessing what God wants us
No.
to do?
We have a
Or
Shulchan Aruch.
are we going with, like,
We have a Shulchan Aruch.
where does like the commandments that Yeshua had? Do those still stand today?
Some of them, yeah. And the Rishonim and the Achronim deal with these questions. Like, we have Shalos and Shuvas in Halacha. The same way that you open up a Shulchan Aruch and figure out like what happens if you put a milchik spoon in a fleshik pot. You have a question like, how do you respond in a military operation? Shalos and Shuvas in Halacha. And there's a lot of innovation happening in the world of halacha, understanding these halachas today because we haven't had them for many years. We haven't been applying them practically for many generations. But in the last few years, certainly in the last few decades, these questions become very real, and we deal with them. We deal with these questions. And then we have to figure out what is the correct thing to do, la halacha. La halacha, the only reason not to carpet bomb Gaza right now, aside from world opinion, forgetting world opinion, is because there's Jewish hostages there. That you can't do. But in theory, if that would eradicate the problem henceforth forevermore, so then, yeah, that would be the right thing to do. Would that solve the problem? Probably not, because we have a lot of other enemies.
You still, with any war, people are going to flee.
Yeah.
This is the only situation in like the history of the world where there's a war and a conflict and they can't flee.
Oh, they can.
Why? Where are they going to go?
My dear friend.
Where, like Israel, like that's the, of course Israel wants them to go to Egypt or other Arab countries, but none of them are going to take them.
Right.
So now you're stuck with a situation where you have an enemy that's like isolated, and you want to.
Now here's the deal.
Them out,
No.
But there's no path. There's no route.
Yes,
unless
no.
they're going to swim in the Mediterranean.
Firstly, they have boats.
I mean,
Aleph. They have boats.
You're going to let them go through the naval blockade and stuff?
My guess is that if they said we're going to Cyprus, Israel would say, we'll pay for your ticket. But
no one's going to take. Yeah, no one's going to take them.
I'm saying, so then invade Egypt. Take your entire militia and invade the Sinai Peninsula. Off you go. Lama lo.
So I'm just saying that's what makes this unique is that there isn't in any war. There is. You're right, and that's a good halacha you brought up of like keeping a path for them to exit. There just isn't an exit, and that's why it's such a difficult situation.
Yeah, yes and no. Many wars. I mean, where's the entirety of Ukraine going? They're not going anywhere.
A lot of different places.
Some.
Europe's taking a lot of refugees.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of them come to the southern border of
Yeah.
America.
But the reality is, the reality is,
Thank you, Trump.
The reality is that you can flip the mirror and literally where is Israel going to go?
Yeah.
Right. So it's like if your back is against the wall with no place to go, so you're gonna let your enemy put that same logic on you. You're gonna say, well, because you don't have a place to go and I don't have a place to go, we're just gonna get along, even though you don't want to get along with me. It's just like somebody's got to go. So it's either me or you.
Or the Palestinians have to decide that they don't want to be at war with Israel. In which case, Israel will be forced to let them stay. But that's, I'm saying, that would require a radically different.
Are the Israelis moving into Egypt right now? Are they moving into Jordan, Syria, Iraq? Where are they moving?
Well, when in days of Mashiach, they will.
Eventually, we are going to. And by the way, this is the point. We're going to get back to the text in a second here because this is important. This is important to understand. Is these questions of what does Eretz Yisrael look like, and what does the expansion of the Jewish state look like, and what does Yemas Mashiach look like, are questions that arise out of the reality of this war. What will be, we do not know. But that there is a potential opening now is clear. Something is open now that was not open 2 weeks ago. There is an opening now. Is it possible that 1 year from now, there will no longer be a Palestinian presence in Gaza? Yes, it is possible. However unlikely we might imagine, we could start seeing that as a possibility. Is it possible that Israel conquers southern Lebanon? Yes, that is possible. Is it possible that the US and Iran are embroiled in quite literally the Third World War? Because we haven't had a war between two superpowers since the Second World War. Is that a possibility? Yes.
Did you see what Biden said tonight?
Not yet.
He
Which
literally
one?
announced to the world in a speech that that he's proud to say that the United States, for the first time since World War II, is now producing and manufacturing all of our own ammunitions and weapons, and basically turning the factories back on for the first time since World War II. I mean, it's like a subtle hint that
Something's happening.
like we're doing things that we haven't done since World War II because it's not World War III, right?
Right? Yeah. I'm saying, is this possible? Yes. All of this is possible. Says from Cook as follows: Milchemes Olam Shel Achshav, the war of the world now. This is 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago. Tzipia Neirah Gedolah V'Amuka Yeshba. There is this immense, intense, deep, powerful, awesome longing and anticipation inside of it. Mitzaref L'chol Gilgule Hazmanim V'Haras Ketz HaMegula. It is connected to all of the revolutions of time and a indication, a hint of the revelation of the end of time. That's what is echoing in the First World War. Is footsteps of the end. Shel his Yashus Eretz Yisrael, of the settlement of the land of Israel. Now, Rav Kook's eyes could see very, very deep into the nature of reality. Rav Kook saw in the First World War the return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel. And he was absolutely right. Between the San Remo Convention and the Balfour Declaration, the First World War was the harboring of the legitimacy in the eyes of the world for the Jewish people to settle in the land of Israel. Rav Kook saw it, he felt it. It says, B'der Gedola, with great wisdom, with great knowledge, B'gvura Atzuma, with immense discipline and strength, U'v'higayon omek v'choder, and with deep penetrating insight, B'tchukas emes u'v'rayon bahir, with a desire, with a passion for truth and a clarity of thought. Tzrichim lekabel es hatochen ha-nisa shel Or Hashem. We need to receive, we need to accept the reality of the uplifting of the light of Hashem, hamiskaleh be'pu'ula nifla'a, that is being revealed in this wondrous activity, not positive, but wonder, literally, as like Pele, this is something to wonder at, to stand in amazement of, which is shock and horror and intimidation and awesomeness. Ba'alilos HaMilchama halal biyichud, with the alilos, the causes, or the causality of this war, biyichud, as a unified entity. What does this lead to? The world is being pulled into something. What does it lead to? Since the Second World War, there has not been another event that has threatened, we'll see what happens, to pull the world in. Meaning even the Cold War was between Russia and the US. It wasn't threatening to pull in other countries. That might have been collateral. But you just hear the comments that are being made. If Israel goes into Gaza, then Hamas will fire on. Then Hezbollah will open the northern front. If Hezbollah fires at the north of Israel and Israel retaliates, then Iran will attack. If Iran attacks Israel, then America will attack Iran. If America attacks Iran, then Russia will back Iran, and China will back Iran, and North Korea will back Iran, and the Europeans will back the US. The dominoes are lined up, Chavra. Like it's lined up. This is what Rav Kook is saying. Amilchamas halal beyichud. There's alilos amilchamas halal beyichud. There is a unity of all of these things. That's like these causalities that are just pulling at each other. It's entirely impossible. It's entirely impossible that Iran gets involved and America doesn't. And if America gets involved, then China's involved, and Russia's involved. And if China and Russia and America are involved, then Europe's involved. Like it's just not possible any other way. It will happen. There's no neutral at that point. There's no We prefer to hang out in our rice paddies and we'll talk to you, at the end of this. No, China's involved. Russia's involved. Maybe Australia will hang out with their kangaroos. But the world is going to be pulled in. It's going to be pulled in. If this happens, this is happening. There are two massive US fleets in the Eastern Mediterranean. It's not just two aircraft carriers. It's two aircraft carriers and the entire fleet that comes with them. Which, by the way, fired back on 3 rockets that came out of Islamic group in Yemen today. Right? Yeah.
Iraq started also.
Right? I'm saying, we're preheating right now. We'll see what happens. Maybe this simmers down.
So if you look at the lineup of who's visiting,
Yeah?
How are you going to simmer all the people that are around the world also? Forget about that.
Correct.
The countries are holding guns to everybody's head. Like the
Correct.
countries at each other. It's like a standoff.
Correct.
And a couple people fighting in the middle.
So that's what's happening.
But all the people inside the countries are all at each other's throats.
Correct. This is what we say every day in davening. Take a look at the last 3 lines here. He said this. Then we say, Baal Milchamos. Hashem is the master of war. Master of wars. Zareh Tzedakos. And in that, he is planting righteousness. Within those wars, there's righteousness that is being sown. The seeds of righteousness. Hashem is, Matzmiach Yeshuos. He is tending to the flowerings of salvation. And he is the master of war, planting the seeds of righteousness, growing salvation, Borei Refuos, creating healing, Nerase Hilos. He who is of awesome praise, Adon Haniflaos, the master of wonders, HaMechadish Betuva Bechol Yom Tamim Ma'aseh Bereshis, who is constantly recreating the world. Oros Chadash Al Tzion Tair, a new light should shine on Tzion. V'nizkeh Chulon Mehira La'aro, and we should soon see this new light shining in Tzion. Says Rav Kook, when wars happen, especially like this, you need to be cognizant of the fact that Hashem is saying something. The windows are open now. Something's happening. Or, strictly speaking, in the language of the Ramchal, the windows are closing, the door is open. Throughout the Ramchal writes in the Maimon Geula, throughout our exile, our access to Hashem, like Shir Shirim says, is mitzitz min acharachim. Sorry, this is what happens when you don't sleep. Mitzitz min acharachim, that Hashem is looking through the windows. He's staring at us from the windows. There's something that happens at this stage of history, which is the windows begin to close because the door starts to open. The door is higher than the windows in terms of our relationship between us and Hashem. We feel windows closing before the door opens. They are happening simultaneously. We just experience them, that the windows are closing before the door opens. They are happening at the same time. And at some point, the windows will shut entirely and the door will open completely. And there might be that moment in between that we don't know where the light will come from. That's our Chodesh Al Tziyun. Chavra, I don't know, and you don't know what is going to be. But the tefillah is that whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trying to achieve by this, he should absolutely achieve without it hurting a single hair on any Jewish head. That's the tefillah. And the more that we are osek in Avodas Hashem, the better it will be for us, and the better it will be for Klal Yisrael. You understand what I'm saying? There's opportunities here. There are awakenings here. There is immense and very powerful, very devastating tragedy. But there are windows closing and doors opening. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is... There's a lot going on. Where this goes, what happens, I don't know. But that something is happening, Pashat. B'Hashem Yisbarach, we should be Zach v'Niska Cholon Meher La'ira. We'll continue Monday. Shkach to the Chavra online. If you have any questions, text, call, WhatsApp, email,
Smash the like
do the
button,
thing.
hit subscribe.
Smash,
Ring that bell.
Smash that like button.
smash something. Ring something.
Question around
Do
that.
tshuva and daven.